Convicted felon Donald Trump is trying to distract and deflect from the Jeffrey Epstein list at all cost. So we set out to find if Donald Trump is on the Jeffrey Epstein list, and if so, how many times. Be sure to get your copy of Red Hats, a pocket guidebook listing over 1,000 companies that support Donald Trump. Make Lying Wrong Again pins and hats and anti-Trump stickers at ProfessorPride.com. In the late 1970s, a 30-year-old woman was working as a saleswoman when a flight attendant friend of hers invited her to join a daytime flight between Texas to New York in a first-class cabin. She later testified under oath. The gentleman sitting by the window introduced himself as Donald Trump. The conversation was mostly exchanging pleasantries, and all of the first-class passengers ate their in-flight meal. That was before she swore under oath, quote, "All of a sudden, Trump decided to kiss me and grope me. There was no conversation. It was like out of the blue. It was like a tussle. He was trying to kiss me, trying to pull me towards him. He was grabbing my breast. It was like he had 40 zillion hands. It was like a tussling match between the two of us." While this woman luckily escaped to the coach seats in the back and never saw him again until he was on television, stories like this seem to have happened all the time, and many of those stories have eerily similar aspects, even though none of the women ever met each other before providing their testimony. Even Trump himself admitted on camera that he did whatever he wanted to do without any consequences his entire life. In his own words, Trump said, quote, "I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. Just kiss. I don't even wait. When you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the... You can do anything." But as creepy as that statement is, it's nowhere close to as creepy as anything Trump and his best friend, Jeffrey Epstein, potentially did together. Jeffrey Epstein was born in 1953 and raised in New York City. At 21 years old, and without any qualifications to do so, he began working as a physics and mathematics teacher at the Dalton School, which taught kindergarten through 12th grade levels. But Epstein was fired just 2 years later because multiple young girls came forward telling the school how Epstein would come to their house parties and reportedly even flirted with many of the young girls in school. Epstein then went on to be an investment banker at a company owned by one of the parents of the children he used to teach. He would quickly work his way up to be a limited partner there, before being abruptly fired there too. But now Epstein had lots of money and started his own financial firm to help rich people invest their money and become even richer. Great. He was working in finance around New York City, so he soon met a building owner in New York, Donald Trump, in the late 1980s. In fact, under sworn testimony, Epstein would later say, Donald Trump was his closest friend. For the next few years, Jeffrey Epstein reportedly began facilitating meetings for very powerful people with underage children. He would sometimes pay these children $300 to perform sexual acts with him, but Epstein mostly got paid by his high-profile clients to set up meetings where they could sexually assault underage children. In 1990, Trump's former wife, Ivana, filed for divorce, where she swore under oath and wrote in her divorce papers that Donald Trump raped her. And while some Republicans like to think that women are meant to be servants to men, the truth is that even in marriage, one partner can rape another if consent is not given. Not only does Ivana swear Trump raped her, but she has evidence to prove it. In 1990, shortly before filing for divorce, she went to a plastic surgeon who came forward in Ivana's divorce proceedings that Ivana came in to repair her scalp. They swore under oath that Trump got upset and ripped her hair out of her scalp. Shortly after that divorce, another woman was at a nightclub in Manhattan when she swore under oath that Trump sat next to her on a couch, put his hand up her skirt, and touched her vagina through her underwear. Other people at the club saw it happen and came to help her get out of the situation. In the beginning of 1992, Trump's business partner was at a dinner with him one night when Trump reportedly put his hands up her skirt, touching her crotch. She later testified under oath that, quote, "I was admiring the decoration, and next thing I know, he was putting me against a wall, and his hands were all over me. He was trying to kiss me. I was freaking out." Perhaps worst of all, later in the same year, a child we estimate to be about 8 years old at the time was going up an escalator while visiting Trump Tower in New York. Yes, it's the same escalator that Trump later came down to announce his candidacy for president. Trump was there filming a scene for Entertainment Tonight, when he was recorded asking the young girl, quote, "You going up the escalator?" The young girl then replied, "Yeah." Then Trump reportedly turned to the Entertainment Tonight film crew and said on camera, quote, "I'm going to be dating her in 10 years. Can you believe it?" In November 1992, Trump was seen in a video laughing and talking with Epstein at his Mar-a-Lago property in Florida. But so far, you might say this relationship was innocent. Sure, there is lots of evidence Jeffrey Epstein did terrible things to underage children, and certainly Trump was a creep so far. But just because they were best friends doesn't mean Trump did anything illegal with Epstein just yet. But in December 1992, a youth choir was singing Christmas carols outside of the Plaza Hotel in New York City, when Donald Trump suddenly showed up. Keep in mind, this was not his hotel, and he had no reason to be there, but he reportedly only showed up for this youth choir singing outside and then left. But when he was there, multiple choir members and parents swear Trump asked two of the girls how old they were. After they responded that they were 14, Trump said, quote, "Wow, just think in a couple of years I'll be dating you." Now just for a moment, think about this. If any LGBTQ person on earth said, "Wow, just think in a couple of years I'll be dating you," to anyone underage, let alone two 14-year-old girls in front of their parents, that person would not survive it to their car to go home in the first place. As if that wasn't bad enough, in 1993, a former Sports Illustrated swimsuit model went to Trump Tower in New York City and was reportedly groped by Trump in front of Epstein. Currently, this is the first reported allegation of Trump and Epstein doing something illegal together at the same time. But this may have been a way for Trump to show his best friend that they both enjoy the same things, while at the same time scarring a young girl for life. In December of the same year, Epstein attended Trump's wedding to Marla Maples. From 1993 to 97, Trump took at least 8 flights on a private jet owned by Jeffrey Epstein, according to flight logs released by the Department of Justice. Keep in mind, Trump had his own private jet at the time, so why would he need to use his best friend's plane unless he was trying to hide where he was going? Meanwhile, in 1996, Trump purchased the Miss Universe organization, which includes the Miss Teen USA pageant. Again, this purchase was seen at the time as innocent to most people, but it plays a huge role later in the story. Shortly after Trump purchased Miss Teen USA, a girl went to the FBI and accused Epstein of sexual crimes in 1996. During her report to the FBI, she identified Donald Trump as someone the FBI should look into for assaults of young children. But considering Trump and Epstein went on to do much more terrible things, it seems the FBI never took this girl seriously. But why would the FBI sweep this report under the rug? Is it because they didn't believe her, or is it because their boss at the time was President Bill Clinton, who was also good friends with Jeffrey Epstein and accused of being one of his clients? Who can say for sure? Now, many Trump supporters who don't like women standing up for their own rights will say that this girl might have lied about the whole incident. But keep in mind, Trump was not running for president yet. He didn't have a TV show yet, and this girl was not asking for any money or fame. In fact, her real name was never published. She was also reporting this to the FBI, not some small-town cop who doesn't know how to investigate things. So she had no reason to lie, and was swearing under oath that the FBI should look into Trump. 1 year later, in 1997, Trump was at the Victoria's Secret Angels party where he was photographed with Jeffrey Epstein. Shortly after, in the same year, Epstein was photographed with Trump at his Mar-a-Lago property in Florida. Then, a former contestant in the Miss USA pageant that Trump now owned swore under oath that in 1997, when she was 21 at the time and backstage, Trump kissed me directly on the lips. I thought, oh my gosh, gross. I think there were a few other girls he kissed on the mouth. I was like, wow, that's inappropriate. Speaking of pageants, also in 1997, at another Miss USA contest, another woman swears under oath that Trump entered the dressing room while contestants were changing. She later testified, quote, I remember putting on my dress really quick because I was like, oh my God, there's a man in here. She also testified that Trump came in the room and called out, "Don't worry, ladies, I've seen it all before." Now, if you're screaming hypocrite at your TV right now, it's likely because Trump's biggest talking point lately is to harass transgender individuals for using restrooms matching their gender. Trump loves to use scare tactics here, telling people that trans people will go into a restroom just to assault others and use being trans as an excuse. But this is now the second of many people who came forward swearing under oath that Donald Trump was the one going into dressing rooms without permission to see them naked. But in 1998, things got a whole lot worse. This is when Jeffrey Epstein purchased a private island called Little St. James off the coast of the U.S. Virgin Islands, right down from Florida, where Trump's Mar-a-Lago property is located. Jeffrey would later also buy the larger island right next door, but Little St. James is where Epstein would create what he called a, quote, world-class destination. Also in 1998, Trump was at the US Open when a woman who was 27 at the time was waiting for a ride outside when she swore under oath that, quote, Trump then walked up to me and reached his right arm and grabbed my right arm. Then his hand touched the right side of my breast. I was in shock. I flinched. "Don't you know who I am? Don't you know who I am?" That's what he said to me. I felt intimidated, and I felt powerless. Then my car pulled up, and I got in. Just 2 years later, according to Social Security records, a 17-year-old girl working at Mar-a-Lago said she was approached by Ghislaine Maxwell, the long-term girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein, who would later be convicted of helping him traffic children to his island. Maxwell reportedly offered this 17-year-old girl a job working for Epstein instead of Trump, and had her start working for Epstein as a massage therapist. They literally hired a 17-year-old girl to be a massage therapist for a then 47-year-old Epstein. That's just creepy, but hold on, because the story is just beginning to get creepy, believe me. In 2000, Trump reportedly walked into another dressing room at another Miss USA contest. The women in that contest say, quote, while preparing for the national broadcast in 2000, Trump came backstage to wish the contestants good luck, even though many of the women weren't dressed. The next year, in 2001, Trump was at it again at the next Miss USA pageant. Contestants there swear, quote, Trump just came strolling right in. There was no second to put a robe on or any sort of clothing or anything. Some girls were topless, other girls were naked. They also swear that after Trump saw them naked in the dressing room, Trump's staff members then told all of the girls to go walk up to him and fawn all over him and talk to him backstage. Yeah, it wasn't even for the show that these girls were told to flirt with him. They were all reportedly told to fawn all over him backstage and off camera, and Trump's staff were the ones telling the girls to do it, which makes them all accomplices. 2 more years later, in 2002, Donald Trump was doing an interview for the New York Magazine, where he said Jeffrey Epstein is a, quote, terrific guy. Trump continued saying, quote, he's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. At this point in the story, you might be wondering, as we were, how the FBI didn't start an investigation into Trump after this. Even if they didn't believe the multiple children who came to their door begging for their help to investigate Trump, they now had Donald Trump himself saying in a recorded interview that he seemingly likes girls on the younger side. But still the FBI did nothing. Only now they were being led by President George W. Bush, who was never accused of being on the Epstein list. So the FBI had nothing to stop them from investigating Trump. Most of the problems we're having now as a country could have been solved if the FBI just locked him in jail back in 2002, or even 1996, when his name was first reported to the FBI. The next year, Trump reportedly sent Epstein a 50th birthday card, with a drawing of a woman's private parts and his signature as the pubic hair. Trump then sued the Wall Street Journal for reporting this for $10 billion in damages. But his only defense was that he never, quote, wrote any pictures, even though he sold many of his drawings before. So either Trump defrauded people at multiple charity auctions with drawings someone else painted and Trump just signed his own name to, or he drew this birthday card for Epstein. Either way, a fascist who is upset that you don't like his paintings sounds a lot like someone else from back in the 1940s, but I am not going to call Donald Trump Hitler again. That would just be elder abuse at this point. Anyway, that same year, Trump held a party at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida, when another woman who was a guest at the party swears that Trump touched her buttocks. She later swore, "All of a sudden I felt a grab, a little nudge. I think it's my friend Ken Davidoff's camera bag that was my first instinct. I turn around and there's Donald. He sort of looked away quickly." Then in 2004, Trump and Epstein had a falling out. They made an excuse at the time saying it was over a property deal, but Trump later revealed that he was upset with Epstein for stealing too many of his younger female employees. This includes the 17-year-old girl who previously worked for Donald Trump and was now a massage therapist for Epstein. Finally, in 2005, local police in Palm Beach, Florida began investigating Jeffrey Epstein after a 14-year-old child told police that she was sexually abused by Epstein at his mansion. In 2006, Epstein was indicted on one state felony charge of solicitation of prostitution, which is a slap on the wrist for what he reportedly did to her. Also in 2005, a reporter for People magazine went to Mar-a-Lago to do a story on the one-year anniversary of Trump being married to Melania. The magazine reporter later testified under oath that as soon as Trump was alone in the room with her to answer interview questions, Trump lunged at her, pushing her against a wall, and started kissing her without her consent. Later in 2005, a receptionist working at Trump's tower in New York swears that when she first met him, Trump kissed her on the cheeks, then moved to her mouth. She later said, quote, "It was so inappropriate. I was so upset that he thought I was so insignificant that he could do that." 1 year later, Trump alleges that he banned Epstein from his Mar-a-Lago property after Epstein tried to sleep with the daughter of another club member. But keep in mind, this was a year after Epstein was indicted for being with a 14-year-old. So, for a whole year, sexually assaulting a 14-year-old was perfectly fine for Donald Trump. It was only after another of his paid club members likely threatened to stop their subscription to his club that he threw Epstein out. That same year, Trump was at a golf tournament in Tahoe, California, when a woman swears she was invited up to his suite, but she did not feel comfortable going alone, so she invited a few friends with her. She later swore, "When we entered the room, he grabbed each of us tightly in a hug and kissed each one of us without asking permission." They all then left the room, and she later received a call from Trump, who reportedly invited her back up to his room, and when she declined, Trump said, quote, "What do you want? How much?" She later received another call a few days later offering her $10,000 to come visit him again, but she once again declined. Trump even offered that she can use his private jet only if she accepted his private invitation. By the way, she was not a prostitute, and even went with her friends thinking she would be safer, but Trump was treating her as if she could be purchased anyway. Also in 2007, a woman contestant on The Apprentice swears Trump kissed her aggressively and touched her breast. She swears Trump led her into his bedroom while working on the show. After she walked out of his room, declining his advances, he embraced her. She tried pushing him away, but he began thrusting his genitals. And for just a moment, spare this woman a thought. You're working your way up in the business world and finally breaking through the glass ceiling, majorly controlled by men in New York City. Then all of a sudden, Donald Trump, a man you may have admired before this, begins thrusting his genitals at you. Yeah, that's right. Try to get that f***ed up image out of your head the next time you watch any news report talking about Trump. And now imagine you saw it in real life. I'm pretty sure I just go pour bleach in my eyes so I never had to see anything ever again. But anyway, in 2008, Epstein pled guilty to procuring a child for prostitution with the state of Florida. But because of his plea deal, he cannot be charged with any federal crimes for this, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So the feds can't charge him with anything because he pled guilty to state charges. But Jeffrey was sentenced to 18 months in jail. Keep in mind he's been reported many times now and even pled guilty to it, but worst case scenario, he only had to serve a year and a half behind bars. Meanwhile, the kids he victimized have to live with this for the rest of their lives. And by the way, one of those kids ended up taking their own life a few years later, which is just tragic in this story. After this 18 months, Jeffrey goes back to his island. Trump continues making his TV show and other projects, but it seems from current evidence, the two did not speak to each other much during this time. In 2010, another woman went into Trump's boardroom for a meeting when she swears, quote, "Trump took Tic Tacs, suggested I take them also. He then leaned in, catching me off guard, and kissed me almost on my lips. I was really freaked out. After the meeting, Trump asked me to come into his office alone. I was really unsure what to do. Figured I can handle myself. Anyway, once in his office, he kept telling me how special I am and gave me his cell. Asked me to call him. I ran the hell out of there." In 2015, seemingly out of nowhere, Trump starts the rumor that President Bill Clinton was a client of Jeffrey Epstein. Now, if you were a secret client of someone, why would you start a rumor of someone else being a secret client too? Especially someone as powerful as the Clinton family. That just makes more people wonder who else was a client, and it's sort of the Streisand effect. But in January 2017, Donald Trump becomes president for the first time. 1 month later, Trump nominates Alexander Acosta for Secretary of Labor, the same guy who oversaw this terrible plea deal in 2008 for Jeffrey Epstein. Now, was this just paying Alexander Acosta back for doing a solid for his buddy Jeffrey Epstein? We don't know for sure. But in 2019, Epstein is arrested in New York with federal sex trafficking charges. He was then sent to the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan. But inside of this jail, he was placed in a solitary cell, with only one camera covering the area. Reporters later recreated this environment and found there were dozens of ways to get into Epstein's prison cell without being seen by this one camera, which was also widely known to act up and not record things properly. Now, why would one of the richest men this jail has ever held be placed in a cell with only one camera covering the area? A camera that was widely known by many of the guards and prisoners to act up and not record things properly. You would assume that the warden of the jail would have put him in a better spot with better coverage, because he was a high-level target. By July of that year, Trump was covering his tracks. Trump claimed he hasn't spoken to Epstein in 15 years, and claims, quote, "I was not a fan of his. That I can tell you. I was not a fan of his." But keep in mind, in 2002, Trump called Epstein a terrific guy and said, quote, "He's a lot of fun to be with." Now, coincidentally, 15 years before this, Trump stopped being friends with Epstein because Epstein was stealing young female employees from Trump. And funny enough, this is around the same time when the police started to hold Epstein accountable. It almost seems like the local police in Florida were incentivized in some way to hold someone accountable now that Trump was angry with Epstein for stealing his young girls. The next month, in August 2019, Jeffrey Epstein is found dead in his prison cell. Immediately after, the world starts sharing conspiracy theories that President Bill Clinton had him killed in his cell. But the truth is, there were a lot of powerful people who may have wanted Epstein dead. Remember, this was the final case for Epstein, and he was going away for a long time, so he had nothing to lose by trying to share info with the cops in exchange for a lesser sentence or some perks in prison. So a lot of people could have sent someone there to make sure he didn't talk. After all, he was in a prison cell that was extremely easy to get into, and everyone knew the flaws of that specific cell. But just as likely, Epstein might have known this was it for him. He might have known lots of powerful people wanted him dead, and he might have known the federal authorities would inevitably ask him a lot of questions about his clients. So it's also possible that he offed himself. The next year, in July 2020, Epstein's girlfriend was charged with helping him traffic children to his island, and Trump told reporters that, quote, "I wish her well." Maxwell was later convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison. But remember how Trump said he and Epstein had this big falling out and never spoke to one another after this incident 15 years before? Well, on the campaign trail for the 2024 elections, Donald Trump used Jeffrey Epstein's private jet instead of his own private jet to fly between campaign stops. But Epstein was long dead, so it was currently owned by Epstein's estate, which is said to be controlled by Maxwell. On that same campaign trail in the run-up to the 2024 elections, Trump told his supporters that he would release the Epstein files as soon as he gets into office again. And his supporters love to say, "Promises made, promises kept." So where are the files? Well, as it turns out, apparently no files exist. That's it, we're done. The FBI, now under the direction of Donald Trump, claims that there is no list of the Epstein clients. This is in stark contrast to Trump's entire team, including Trump himself, saying that the Epstein list is on their desk and waiting to be published. You know, it's funny, this isn't the first time that Trump got into power and all of a sudden files go missing. It's funny how that always seems to happen. So this is where the story gets interesting, because remember Jeffrey's private island? Well, Epstein covered every room on that island with hidden cameras as a security feature. Epstein claimed if any one of the powerful clients he had ever tried harming Epstein, he would simply release the tapes of those clients on his island with young children. Now, I'm not a billionaire, but even I can figure out this was an empty threat. If Epstein ever did release those tapes, a lot of questions would then come down on him, wondering how those children got there on his island in the first place. But when the FBI arrested Epstein in 2019, they also reportedly confiscated flight records of everyone who went to the island, financial records of everyone who paid Epstein, and all of those videotapes showing some of those clients assaulting children. It's all currently in evidence lockers and has not been destroyed because some of those powerful people and Maxwell are still alive, which means the evidence cannot be burned yet. So technically speaking, Trump is probably correct here. If you were to look inside of that evidence locker, there likely would not be a list that Epstein kept of all of his clients' names. But there would be flight logs, financial transactions, text messages, and of course video footage from these hidden cameras that would allow investigators or reporters to compile a list of Epstein's clients. So why not release all of the evidence and show everyone who was a client of Jeffrey Epstein? Well, back in May of 2025, then U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi told Donald Trump that his name appeared in the Epstein files. Trump then immediately went out to reporters and told them that he would only be releasing the parts of the Epstein files that he thought were credible. In other words, Trump was either going to scrub his name from the Epstein files before releasing them, or preemptively tell his supporters that if they see his name in the files, that part of the list is fake news. But we still don't have the full Epstein files. Trump has tried to cover his tracks by releasing already public information to terrorist organizations like Libs of TikTok. He released the Martin Luther King Jr. files without the family's consent, and he's tried to distract the country by even sending the National Guard to Washington. But still, even his own supporters want the full unredacted Epstein files released. Trump supporters will say that Democrats don't want the Epstein files released because Bill Clinton might be in them. But there are two giant holes in that storyline. First off, a majority of Democrats have said that they want every single person who ever sexually assaulted children arrested and charged with those crimes, regardless of party affiliation. And secondly, Republicans are the ones in control. So how can Democrats be blocking the release of files when Republicans control the House, Senate, Supreme Court, and the executive office? We've seen Trump supporters say for decades now that they are the only ones wanting to protect our children. Anytime they don't like anything at all, they start calling Democrats pedophiles. They even started a wild conspiracy theory that there was a pizza shop in Washington, D.C. that had a secret basement where Oprah Winfrey was part of a pedophile ring, slaughtering babies and drinking their blood to remain youthful. Now, I'm not sure if you've seen Oprah lately because while she is beautiful, she is not what I would describe as youthful. But one of Trump's supporters believed it so much that he branded weapons and stormed into that pizza shop, only to find out the entire city of Washington, D.C. does not have any basements at all because it was built on top of a swamp. So I understand why Trump would never want the Epstein files released, because he was told that his name appeared in those files many times. But his audience and the whole country should not stop calling for the unredacted files to be released until they are published. The public has a right to know who in our government was on that list, no matter their party affiliation. I want to be clear, even after those tapes are released by the FBI, we may not ever have any physical evidence of anyone in this story, including Trump, assaulting anyone under the age of 18. If you ask any detective working on these types of crimes, they would tell you that those whom they investigate tend to be very careful in how much they write things down or where cameras are to record them. but we can at least look at the evidence that is available to us right now. Thanks to sworn testimony, we know that Trump went to a youth choir performance in December 1992 and reportedly told two 14-year-old girls that he would date them in a couple of years. We know, thanks to a recording from Entertainment Tonight, that Trump told a young girl, who we can guess was about 8 years old at the time, that he was going to date her in 10 years. Sure, neither of these statements are illegal. We do have free speech in America, and as vile as those statements are, they would be covered under free speech. In order to be illegal, there would have to be evidence of an action taken by Trump accompanying those statements. But in my opinion, those statements, at the very least, should have been a red flag for federal authorities to start looking closely at the person who made them. Now, it goes without saying that Donald Trump and his team deny every single one of these allegations against him. His supporters don't believe anything that any of these women or children say. But it is worth noting that Donald Trump has been convicted of raping one of the women making these claims, and has been ordered to pay her in a defamation case after he continued saying she was lying about the whole situation. It's also worth noting that one of Trump's closest friends nowadays, Elon Musk, publicly shared a statement after he left Trump's administration saying, quote, "Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT." So I will leave it up to you to decide for yourself if you believe any of these allegations are true. Some of them have been made by people who wanted no fame or fortune at all. Other claims have been made by a man who spent hundreds of millions of dollars to get Trump elected. With the sheer number of allegations which oddly parallel each other in weird ways, it is certainly enough evidence for me to keep my family as far away as possible from Donald f***ing Trump. If you're struggling with the overwhelming amount of allegations and evidence in this case, do an experiment with me. For just a moment, take Donald Trump's name out of the story so far. Pretend like every allegation and conviction was made against any other person on Earth. Now ask yourself, how do you feel about that person? Any person thinking rationally about this would be angry or upset. They might even call that person a creep. But you would certainly not trust your children to be alone in the same room with that person. And now, put Donald Trump's name back into the story. If you suddenly felt better about any of these allegations, now knowing that it was against Trump, you're part of the problem. Republicans routinely fight against people who have any number of these allegations against them. But suddenly, if you put Trump's name back into the story, they don't care about it at all and call everyone a liar. Remember, in his own words, Trump said, quote, "I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. Just kiss. I don't even wait. When you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the... You can do anything." And remember, under sworn testimony, Jeffrey Epstein told the FBI that Donald Trump was his closest friend. And Donald Trump told reporters in a recorded interview that Jeffrey Epstein is a terrific guy. He even said he's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. Until those files are released, we don't know for sure if Trump was a client of Jeffrey Epstein. I certainly cannot prove, nor would I even remotely claim in a video in this political environment, that he even did anything inappropriate on Jeffrey Epstein's island. But I do know if this was anyone else with this many allegations and convictions, that person would be the most hated man on earth. Just because it's Trump saying these things and reportedly doing these things, everyone else is called a liar. So maybe Trump was right about one thing in his life. When you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.